Hello.
Hello.
Welcome to our Monday, everyone. We're happy to be streaming live. My name is Leticia Garza. I'm here from Epic Consulting, hosting this space. And we have Bill and Richard here. Do you guys want to do a quick who you are?
Hi, I'm Richard McCrow. I work at Bakersfield College.
I'm Bill Moseley. I also work at Bakersfield College.
BC in the house. And we've come together to talk, do a little book discussion on So You Want to Talk About Race, and also share our insights and then learn from our guests as well. And this week we have two guests who will be joining us in a few minutes, but I wanted to go ahead and share our insights first and what we've gotten from the book. But before we jump into that, I did want to share real quick, since it is International Women's Day, I have a couple of photos that I wanted to share for myself and Richard. So bear with me as I switch screens here real quick. I wanted to sort of just celebrate, I guess, myself, and then also my family and the women in my life today. And then I'm excited that we have two other women here with us tonight. But let me see. This is my sweet grandma. Oh, that's not it. Okay. This is my sweet grandma. She passed away last year, but I wanted to honor her today. She loved wearing hats. This was one of her favorite hats. I don't know when it became a thing, but she wore fedoras like for the last 5 years of her life. That was like the gift we always gave to her. And she was always so excited to get a new hat. And that was one of her favorites. And I love the little zebra stripe there. So I wanted to share that.
That's a beautiful picture.
And then she's adorable. And then Richard shared this with me to honor his family. Richard, do you want to talk a little bit about who's in this pic?
Yeah, those are the women in my life. Somebody's missing here. That's my mom in the center. She just passed away this past August, and I miss her very much. But love and compassion and caring for all kinds of folks that she always came across. People loved her. She worked at Gonzaga University down in the COG, which was a restaurant in the center of the campus. And she sort of taught me the things I know about trying to empathize with other people. And then to the left there is my daughter, Mary. And in the bottom left-hand corner is my granddaughter. And then my daughter, Maggie, and my other granddaughter to the right there.
Do your grandkids have names? Do you want to share their names?
Eloise is in the right hand there, and Sage is the one blowing the dandelion.
Yeah, super cute. Okay, so we can share other photos if any of the other guests want to send me something. We can throw it up on the screen as we're chatting. Is there anything that either of you want to kind of pull out before we jump in? Because I have a statement at the very top of this that I want to kind of put up on the screen and get your reaction. But if there
I've got some highlights and notes in my book, but I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna wait and see which ones I want to pull out later on, depending on how the conversation goes.
Yeah.
Okay, Richard, do you have anything?
No, I'm the same. I got notes all over the place and highlighted topics, and so I'm ready.
Okay, so this statement I love. I'm gonna put this up because this is something that we all probably have heard. If you haven't experienced it yourself, I can guarantee you that you've heard it in any of your spaces. And that is this quote when Oluo talks about a conversation in chapter 2 that she's had with with a friend where and I've had this similar experience where you feel like it's a safe space and that this person is a safe person to share your feelings. And then you use this word that you think describes the situation or the person or the situation, the actions of the person. And you hear something like this, whoa, 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 you can't just go around calling anything racist, save that word for the big stuff. And I wanted to get your guys' reactions because I know I've heard it. So I don't know if you've heard it, if you said it, if you've thought it, maybe when you've encountered this situation. I wanted to start here because this is, to me, one of the most common microaggressions maybe that we kind of deal with.
Is it micro, or is it just aggressive? Or is it just aggressive? I don't know. You know,
good point.
There's a really interesting sort of framework in Dr. Kendi's book, How to Be an Anti-Racist, where he talks about what racism really is and what it isn't. And he talks about this idea that in white culture, gosh, it sounds like an oxymoron, but in the language of white folks, racism has been elevated to such a notoriously just horrible level. And it is horrible, but it's been framed as something that only horrible people are capable of. And the function that serves is that it one allows people who are supporting racist systems to sort of say, well, that's not me. I mean, I'm not burning a cross on my lawn, or, you know, I'm not wearing a swastika on my jacket.
Yeah.
So I'm not a racist, because that's racism is what horrible people do, not fine people like me. And I'm reading another book right now called Racism Without Racists. It plays on the same idea, right? This idea of colorblind racism, or sort of like a genteel racism, I guess. But it's this idea that if we elevate racism to like this cardinal sin, then we excuse ourselves from the many things that we do every day that are actually racist, in that they support racist systems. And there's a statement. It's funny you start off with that, because there's a statement right after that where she says this about this same conversation. It says, it seemed far more important to him that the white people who were spreading and upholding racism be spared the effects of being called racist than sparing his black friend the effects of that racism. Oh, what?
That was one of the ones I was going to pull it out.
I was reading off my notes, so I didn't even see that you had it up on the screen. Right? I mean, so that's sort of the crux of all of this, is like, if we make racism something that only really bad people do, then nobody's going to call us racist. Then how can we be racist? Because racism is that horrible, ugly thing. But me, I'm just, you know, trying to treat everybody the same, and I don't see color, and, you know.
And you say things like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Yeah, whoa, we don't need to jump to racism. Isn't there a kinder word that we can use? So I really, this is like a really fresh angle for me. So I'm still sort of like reveling in the idea, but racism really isn't that big of a thing, in that it's like, you don't have to be like doing horrible, unspeakable things to be racist. You simply just have to be not changing the systems that are racist. You know, passive participation, I think, is still on the wrong side of the line. So, right. Anyway, Rich, I want to give you a chance too, but yeah, I think this is such a subtle point that it could be easily overlooked how important it is.
Yeah.
Just for a second, though, Richard, I'm going to pull this off because this is something I'm going to bring up and make sure that Chrissy and Gigi have a chance to chat with us about it, and go back to this one because I want to know, your experience, if you heard it, thought it.
I think
said it.
Yeah. I don't recall ever really saying it, but I have thought it. I've heard somebody, saying that somebody's a racist and automatically jump to, okay, they're just going to extreme. But I'd listen to what they had to say, but not really taken seriously, because once they said somebody was a racist, I felt like they leaped. Now this is, in especially in the past couple of years, I think that the discussion around this kind of topic is my biggest fear now. Is, did I shut other people off? Whether it was this exact statement or not, is that, I just wonder, as I think back, did I shut people off? And that worries me a little bit. And it worries me a lot, actually. But I do think that there is the protectionism for some reason that's automatic that white people get to enjoy. That if somebody jumps to saying that somebody's a racist and jumping to the conclusion that no, they're not. No, they're not. More and more, I'm learning that for myself, I think that if I'm doing racist things, I want to be called out as the racist that I am, and deal with those feelings and give the person a chance to say why something I'm doing is racist or not, but believing the fact that racist behavior is there. There's, in my heart, if I'm called a racist, there's an immediate jump to defend myself as not being racist. And I've experienced that a couple times, to where maybe I haven't said this statement, but I've thought, whoa, don't jump to calling me a racist. How dare you? And that has its challenges, only because it hurts your heart to actually admit that some of the things you've said or thought or acted on were racist.
Well, I think.
Sorry. I want to bring it because I think, and Richard and I have talked about this a lot when we talk about anything that has to do with racism, sexism, like all of those isms. There's a great sketch in Portlandia where they're talking about sexual harassment, and it's a boardroom, and there's the sole female, and they're talking about sexual harassment. And there was someone, I think, I'm maybe butchering this, but there was someone who had either been investigated or there was something to do with sexual harassment. And all the men in the room turn to the woman at some point in the sketch and say, that's awful, but not me, right? And like every single man, you don't mean me, right? But not me, right? Like I never did, like not me. It's hilarious because it's true. And I feel like that's the same, it's like the same mentality when it comes to racism.
Yes.
But not me, right? You're not talking about me.
Well, it's, I think there's an important thing here that sort of goes along with what I was saying earlier about, doing things that are racist or a racist behavior versus a person being a racist, right? In one instance, we're labeling a person as like, this is the core of who you are. You're a racist, versus that thing that you said or that thing that you did, or that thing that you did was racist. That was a racist action, in that it, as Oluo says, it was a thing that you did that supported a racist system, or supported a system that was unfairly applied based on race. Mm-hmm. And so, obviously there are probably a lot of people out there in the world who are racist, but it's interesting, I think, that Oluo in this chapter says, that's not really the people we're concerned about. We're concerned about the systems.
Mm-hmm.
And those people, the people, trying to change the minds of those people who have racist beliefs or are racists or are the outspoken racists. She's got a great term that's much better than what I'm saying, but I can't remember what it is. You probably already have it prepared in a quote for me. But she says that's like having cancer and treating the symptoms and hoping that fixes the cancer.
Right.
I think that's a great illustration, right? Because the cancer here is the system, the racist systems, and a lot of these attitudes and personal opinions are just the symptoms of that, or an outgrowth of those systems. In that, our natural state as white men is to preserve the power of white men.
Yeah.
Because that's homeostasis for us. So it's natural in the worst possible way, I guess is a good way to put it.
Yep, that's good. Okay, I want to go ahead and talk about the topic of the day, which is the title of the chapter, What is Racism? And since we've already kind of touched on our own personal, what we see or what we think and the experiences that we've had, I'm going to go ahead and bring Chrissy and Gigi on, and then we'll go into a couple of the other quotes that I have on here, but I want to make sure we have enough time for them to kind of introduce themselves. So up first, I'm going to add Chrissy. This is Chrissy Norris, co-founder of CARE and owner of Camby Designs. Hello, Chrissy.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Chrissy.
Hi.
Good to see you.
And then next, I'm going to add Janora McClanahan. She goes by Gigi, and I don't know if that's what she prefers, but I get to call her that. She's a life coach, and she helps people through her business called It's Because of Love. And I do want you ladies to, hi, Gigi.
Hi.
I want you to have a opportunity, a little bit to talk about why you agreed. I mean, I know you love me, but also why this seemed like a good forum and a good conversation. The topic, the book, whether or not you've read it, the idea that this book exists called So You Want to Talk About Race, I think is a big deal. So, Chrissy, do you want to share a little bit about why maybe it was important for you to come on chat?
Sure. Hi, I'm Chrissy. I am the co-founder of CARE, which is a coalition on anti-racism education. And I read this book over the summer, and, along with a lot of other Americans in the light of George Floyd, we got together as a collective to really try to understand and really just dive deep into this. And so I liked the book because it really just kind of laid it all out there. It was really easy to read. And I thought that this topic would be good just to kind of jump in and share, my voice and just be a part of the conversation. Because the more that we're a part of the conversation, I think the more it kind of demystifies everything. And just to kind of jump back on what you guys were saying on calling people racist, or whoa, let's not use that word when we're talking about our grandmothers or people that we love. Let's save it for the big stuff. I think, and like Richard said, the more that you call people out on it, the more they become aware. And I think awareness is one of those things that people don't always realize. And if we're holding people accountable, then maybe they start to think twice about what it is that they're saying. And that just creates the idea that you can't just go around saying things. Whether or not you're racist, or you are a racist, or you're just acting racist, these things are not okay. And we've heard it for so long, and people just kind of threw out these comments. And so I like to just be a part of the conversation. And I just wanted to be here to support Leti and and to be a part of this conversation, because I thought this was a really good book, and it was a really good starter just to kind of have that conversation going. Thank you for having me.
Gigi.
Hi, I am Janora Gigi McClanahan. I of course know Miss Letty, and of course we talk about many things over time. And yes, I do love you. That is definitely what I'm here. But I come from another place, so I'm a Martian. So I come from Berkeley, California. So that's where I was raised. So all of this, you can call it racism, call it whatever you want to call it. I come from a land where everybody loves everybody and respects everybody. And I didn't know I was Black until I was 21.
Wow.
And it's when I went away to Chico State to college, is when I first got told that I was Black. So, because I never knew, there was no need to know it. Because it just didn't matter. So because they're in Berkeley, in the Bay Area period, you have it's the land of everybody. Everybody's there. And everybody's you learn different cultures, and it's a good thing. So one of the reasons I wanted to come on here is to share that, you know what? There's racism. Racism is real and has been real for a very, very, very long time. But instead of concentrating on racism so much, how about acceptance of differences? Kind of look at it that way. So
awesome, thank you. I'm gonna start sharing comments from. We've got some people chiming in on our different platforms, and so I wanted to make sure that you all got to see that because we have a hello. For Chrissy there. Gigi, you got a hello also. But Sally wanted to, before I even put this question up, she said, we need to decode the meaning of racist. But I think that our focus is what is racism because of the chapter. And the first thing I'm going to put up, and you can all comment on this. And I put this in quote, but the idea of real racism, and maybe we kind of already touched on that because we did the whoa, right? And how far do we go when we talk about someone or call someone out? What does this mean? If anyone wants to elaborate a little bit more on what you've already said, but this is something that is defined separately in the book, like the difference between real racism and the whoa situation where you don't need to go that far.
Yeah, I think when you start to look at, we've sort of had this vision of racism our whole lives, and it was created for us, and it was even reinforced with the attack on the Capitol. The white guy marching through the Capitol with the Confederate flag is, when you say racist, that is what comes to my mind. I think in the book, the dangerous part of, my brother Sam talked to me, and he passed away years ago, but he and I had a conversation one time because he had moved down south and lived in the panhandle of Florida, but it was his first real experience in the overt racism, and we talked about it, and I said, well, I remember having to say, I don't want to live there, but he said, you know what, the overt racism isn't the problem. And I, from Washington State, up in Spokane, and he said the real problem is living in a place like Spokane where people claim to be really good people, but deep down their bias and the racism that they have deep in their heart is the dangerous racism. And so I sometimes think of what it can. Is it okay if I call you Gigi? But I think what Gigi was pointing out is, it is important to really care about each of us. I think that I'm becoming more and more aware of the problem of seeing that there are a lot of white people that pretend to care, and that to me is a huge problem. And so as I read through the book, the part that I want to work on is being genuinely caring and taking genuine action and having genuine discussions about race and racism, because I think life has been hard for a lot of people, and it's time that I open my awareness on the whole subject.
I want to ask Chrissy to kind of chime in here, because we've talked a lot about what it's been like growing up. And I mean, we joke a little bit about what that means, especially in spaces where we just felt like we had to fit in and didn't think about it. So I want Chrissy, if you would, maybe think a little bit about what real racism means growing up, especially where you grew up.
Way to put me on the spot. No, I'm just kidding. I grew up in Southern California. It's a small town called Poway, and it's a predominantly white, affluent town. And I liked how Gigi, can I call you that also? Sorry. I like that she said she didn't realize she was Black until she was 21. I don't think I realized I was Filipino until probably like right when I went into college. I went to Cal State Long Beach, and I felt like I was a white girl, just like the rest of the girls that I went to high school with. I was a cheerleader. I was well liked. And so it was very strange growing up where I grew up, and then going to college at Long Beach, where it was just a diverse group of people, and you see, all ages, all races, and you realize, holy cow, my bubble is so small where I grew up. And there's a huge racism problem that's just kind of been emerging over the last couple of years in Poway. I never noticed it until I started reading about it on social media. And because I was such tunnel vision with who I was hanging out with. And now that it's kind of been brought to light, again, that whole awareness piece, it's been brought to light. People are really speaking out. People are really stepping out of their comfort zone to make everyone aware of this. It's starting to bring back all these flashbacks of these different little instances where a teacher would say something, because you were this, you can't do this. And that was a little disheartening, because my children now go to school in that district. And I've always thought it was a great district. It prepared me for life. It prepared me to go to college. I felt like I had all these opportunities, and to come back 20 years later and realize that there's all of these racist things that are now happening in this town, it's a little hard to kind of swallow. And now I think back, and do I want my kids to go to school here? They're only 8. I have 8-year-old twins, so they're little. They're in elementary school, and everyone loves them, and everyone loves our family. But I hear it just gets progressively worse as they get into middle school and high school. And, that's already a tough time for people anyway, but to have them be a multiracial child or multiracial children, and my children have 2 moms because I had my kids with my ex-partner who's a woman, there's a lot of stuff going on there. So, to address real racism, I think it's hard. It's hard to unpack because of who I am and where I grew up, and because I'm lucky to say that I don't think I've really experienced it in the ways that have kind of been brought to light. And maybe I just chose to ignore it. Maybe I didn't realize it at the time, but when I think back on it, there were comments that had been thrown at me, because you're Filipino, maybe you should focus on this instead of this. And those types of things you start to think back on and realize, well, holy cow, these people were racist. they were putting me into this box, and now I don't want to fit into the box. I'm going to do and be whoever I want, you know. So it's been interesting to kind of dive into this topic and to really kind of explore my own upbringing and try to figure out, you know, where I fit in, because I honestly feel like I have been lucky, and that I don't think that I've experienced that overt racism. There might have been those microaggressions that have been thrown at me, but I've been lucky in that I've been strong enough to kind of brush them aside or brush them under the rug and not take them to heart. But that doesn't make it right. It's just I just kind of let it fall off my shoulders.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we kind of train ourselves to do that. Gigi, do you want to add anything? This quote, real racism, I don't know if there's something specific you want to tackle there.
I was, listening to you guys talking before you brought us on, and that whoa whoa quote, and of course, it's that. Let's see, how can I put this? Everybody wants to be politically acceptable, right? So, because you got to go to work, right? And you have to be amongst people. So you want to know what script is okay to use. Mm. So it may not even really be what you really believe. It didn't have anything to do with that. It has to be, we all want to keep our jobs. We want to have health benefits. We want all those things that we need. So we don't want to say anything that would take those things away. But that doesn't mean that's what you believe. You're just doing what you're supposed to do to go to work. So, so to me, real racism is the script life that you live. That's not what that has nothing to do. You really don't feel that way. I can't remember which one of the gentlemen said earlier about. I think it was you, Richard. You were talking about people being genuine. Being genuine in even being supportive, right? That people come out of the woodwork and all of a sudden everybody wants to get on the bandwagon and say we're for you. But that's what I grew up with, again, because I'm from Berkeley. There were more. I grew up with the Black Panthers, so that's the time period where I was there. So, but Black Panthers took care of everybody, not Black people. And everybody thinks it was just Black people. It was not. It was everybody. They started the first feeding programs, and they fed every one of the kids. It didn't matter who. It just didn't matter. People that were hungry got fed, and that's just how that's how it went. But like you said, some you just want people to be genuine, but people don't know because they're told, well, don't say that, or don't think that, or feel that, right? So the real racism is the thing that you're told, well, you can't say that in public, right? But we have a different script at home.
Yeah, that idea that you can't ever be your authentic self, because like Bill said, that system is the racism comes from the system. Right. And then you're saying it's almost like we've had conversations about code switching, but what you're saying is even goes a little bit further, because it's one thing to code switch for some of us when we walk into a certain room with certain people. We have to speak a certain way or look a certain way or act a certain way or not talk at all and just fade into the background. Right. But then it's also like, well, how do you then what do you do if you can't be your authentic self? What does that do to you? And so the real racism then is that there are people who can't just exist as who they are. Right. And that's the damage that's where the damage comes from.
I believe those are the people that become, what was that statement for the big stuff? The people that that's where the big stuff comes. That's how the big stuff gets there. Because you're not being authentic. And you also because you're not being authentic, you're not learning that what you're saying or thinking is inappropriate.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So then it's like a brick wall. Somebody hits you with a basketball out of nowhere. Right. Yeah, I'm not racist. Right. I want to move on to a different statement or quote, but first I want to know if there's anything else that anyone else wants to bring up, Bill or Richard, from the book specifically, before I move on to the next shift. It's still racism, but
Well, one of the things that the quotes that really sort of struck me is when she was talking about her friend and her conversation with her. It sounded like a white male friend to me. I don't even know if she described him as such, but that's just a picture I had in my head.
I
based on
picture
his
that.
actions. I mean, come on. Who else would
So
say something else?
am I being racist because I'm picturing a white? Okay.
Yeah. It struck me about what she said is that after that conversation, she wasn't mad. She was heartbroken.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's just it. I mean, what it must feel like to realize that somebody you thought was a trusted ally was in fact completely clueless and not safe for you at all.
Yeah.
I mean, that's rough. I don't have a lot of really close relationships in my life. I have 7 kids. I mean, who has time for friends, right? But I remember talking to my wife sometimes about some of her friendships, and they evolve, and over time you let people go and things. But just I hear a lot of her voice, and just realizing that you had a friend who wasn't what you thought they were.
Mm-hmm.
But this is on a whole nother level, right? Because it's much deeper, and the tentacles of that sort of racist ignorance or just oblivion, I don't know what you would call it, just stretch into so many things, and I can't even imagine what that would feel like to have that, to feel that situation where you're with somebody who you thought was, hey, this person's on my team, and you find out that not only are they not on your team, but they won't even admit that they don't even know that they're not on your team. So where do you even start with that? That's heartbreaking, for sure.
Yeah, it is. That I like that she uses the word that he wasn't safe.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't necessarily pose a danger to her specifically, like as a person, but I'm going to pull this quote back up. But this idea that because he didn't want to be uncomfortable, or he didn't want to blame someone else or call another white person racist, she just knew, like, there's like this level of betrayal, maybe this sense of loss for sure, that that now that's not a safe place for you, that her safety wasn't important enough. So I can leave this quote, and now that Bill, that you've kind of steered us back in that direction, if anyone wants to add to that, because God, I know I've experienced it. I mean, even recently, the idea that I thought that I could be in a space and feel like I could be my authentic self, and then all of a sudden it was like, that's not the space. This is not that space anymore, and it was sudden, and it was painful. Anyone want to share?
Yeah, I think I as I'm going back to what Gigi had said about really caring for each other and taking care of and loving each other, but the author does address that in the book about loving thy neighbor. It is not going to reduce the police brutality. It's what else I good? Not going to income. It's not going to reduce the prison population of people of color.
Right.
Kinds of things. And I think too, I think when she was making that statement, I thought about, the Bakersfield College has the inmate scholar program. It's a face-to-face program, and going into the prison and meeting our students, and on their territory kind of thing, and talking to the students, and just falling in love with these guys. And they, at the time was guys. Now we also have female students at the women's prison, but just seeing how much you really cared for them, and that the good feeling about what we're doing and all the discussions and the thank yous and the appreciation that these guys had for what we were doing as a goal. But then I read this statement, I walked out of there and I thought, I could have all the love in the world for these guys, and it doesn't change the situation of, how come there's so many people of color in prison. How come, the school to prison pipeline is documented, and it shows that, a lot of our, BIPOC students end up in prison simply because of the color of their skin, as you follow it through and look at it. And so it does take, for the action part of it. I love the caring for your friends and people around you and caring for your community. But I think too, it takes action and research to really discover what the heck is going on and believe what is happening, so that your action is targeted appropriately.
When we talk about radical empathy in the coalition and care a lot of the conversations we have with people outside of our group, there's a lot of talk, again, I think I said this last time, about the action that's attached to that you can have all the feelings, feel all the feels, but then what are you doing about it in your community? Like you're saying, is what I'm doing impacting maybe that one person? But then when you look at the bigger picture, what role am I playing in this system? And then how am I supporting actual change? Gigi, I don't know if growing up in Berkeley, and I mean, you have experience growing up in a part of the country and in an era, and I'm only saying this because you said it. The Black Panthers were around. If there's anything that kind of comes to mind when we talk about that, like that bigger picture, like, yes, the grassroots definitely impacts the lives of people in the community. How do you look at like the bigger picture, even in what like you're doing? Because we've talked about your business a little bit.
Yeah.
How do you see the bigger picture?
I see the bigger picture is what somebody used the word earlier. The biggest thing that I think we just don't, as people, meaning everybody, is we're not authentic. B, we do not accept what we have done and who we are. We don't do that because it's not supposed to look like that, right? Well, I mean, you can't walk around saying you're a bad person all day. How's that gonna go over? So or you feel bad about certain things. We're not. It's hard to deal with the things in life that you're not pleased with yourself, right? And share them with other people. So I think that's the my business as a life coach is because I coach people. So I don't fix your life. I don't. Sometimes I don't really even give you suggestions other than the fact that, what do you want? One of my famous questions is, what do you want to be when you grow up? Mm-hmm. Or in a perfect world, how would it look to you? Mm. And that's kind of where you have to start for a person to get wherever it is they want to go.
I love this idea of coaching. We created curriculum and wanted to kind of give people an experience, and maybe coaching is a better word, to kind of lean into this quote of, you have these ideas and these feelings about something, but what's the root of that? It's you're not comfortable, and then you're not a safe space or a safe person for this friend who you supposedly care about. So how do you coach people? I mean, we can all think about this. Like, how would you say? And it's obviously not up to people of color to always be the coach, but even like, maybe I'll call you guys out, Richard and Bill. How do you look at that and say, well, can we coach each other? Can we get together and have these conversations? And if someone says, either that they were on the receiving end of something like this where they felt betrayed, or they're not in a safe space anymore, or they're the perpetrator. They're the person who is making someone else feel that way, but they don't think they've done anything wrong. Especially as managers, how do you kind of look at that?
I don't see what do Richard and I have in common. I don't see it.
You're men.
Oh, right. Yeah, you know, it to me, I think if you're really going to make a difference, there's two things that I keep telling myself. One is to be humble, because I don't even know what I don't know. And the you know, I keep telling people, the more I learn about life and the way things work, the more I realize I don't know anything. So I think wisdom is learning about how much you don't know in life. But you know, the other thing is is just being willing to make sacrifices and being willing to say, hey, I messed up. Being willing to say, you know, hey, I'm going to let you go first, or I'm going to assist you to go first. You know, in my world, it's about putting your money where your mouth is, you know. You know, the thing that we talked about in the last chapter, the idea that others exist to have less so that I can have more. To me, it's about reversing that, and that means I have to have less. And if I'm not willing to do that, then I'm not going to make a difference as a manager or as a person or as a dad. I mean, I've got to, you know, my kids are watching all the time. They're listening right now, because after this, I'm going to get commentary about it.
Good.
Not lying.
But do you look at having less as like I don't know if this is the right thing to say, and it's not offensive to say it. But this idea that if a white person says I have to have less, there's a danger in like leaning into the white savior mentality a little bit?
No, I'm not here to save anybody. I'm here to sacrifice. I'm here to give to the system that exists for race around racism in America has given me a level of privilege. It's given me a head start in the race, and my job is to take that privilege and give it up, to give it to people, to use it on their behalf if ever I can. And that's tricky and it's complicated, and I think a lot of white people that would be sitting around hearing this, that sounds terrifying, because you don't know what that means. That means your quality of life is about to change. No, who wants to hear that, right? So, but it all goes back to that same statement. They exist to have less so that I can have more. That's the idea that keeps racism alive. That's the idea that perpetuates the racist systems in our world. That somebody else should have less so that I can have more. Well, I want you to have some, just not as much as me.
Right.
We can't have it both ways. We can't have a system that divides privilege based on race and also not be racist.
She
should.
does. Oh.
Well, I was just going to say that maybe the next time we tackle this, we should use Caste as the next book, because that's, I don't know, it's a deep dive, but it definitely describes, I mean, really expands on that idea and goes into detail on the less and more, and who gets to have what at what level and why. It's incredible. Sorry, Richard, I didn't mean to.
No, that's quite okay. Yeah, I was going. I really lost my train of thought. Sorry. Yeah, I was gonna sort of how complicated what Bill is discussing, and Letty following up with that question, how complicated that situation is to and to recognize when that privilege, where that privilege is. That's easier said than done. And we talked about this the last time. And she talked about it in the book about, if my defense is suddenly I grew up poor, and we, it's like, well, yeah, maybe you did, but we're not talking about that right now. We're talking about
Yes.
the oppression of a lot of people of color that do not have the same advantages as you, and so I have to do like Bill said. You've got to accept the fact that a lot of what I've gotten is because I am white, and that is a hard pill to swallow, and especially when you do pretty much chunk of your life saying, I'm great, look at all this stuff I keep doing and getting things done and moving forward. And
I've heard Richard
I'm
say that a lot at work.
amazing.
He says it all the time. People are like, Richard, be quiet.
but truly, then realizing at times in my life, things came easy because I'm white.
Okay.
And
hang on a second.
This is the book right
I
here.
was gonna say, okay, let's take a break from the white guy talking about how awesome his life is, because I'm just kidding.
Seriously, right?
But the last little bit that I want to pull up in these last few minutes is this idea of reverse racism, because there's one of the arguments is, well, if we shift too far to the other side, then it's going to be racism against all the white people, right? So anybody want to jump into this?
Please let me tackle that one. I'll defer to Gigi on this one, but I want to say something about reverse racism when she's done.
No, I'm actually I was not picking on you, but I'm using you, Bill, with the things that you just said. So,
do it.
You're saying I have to decrease so that others can increase. That's basically what you said. Basically,
Sure.
And stay humble, right? So, does that help? Like Letty was saying, does that balance it out, or does it become now you have to acknowledge I'm going to take less because I want other people to have more, right? So when in your generations, because it might not be with you, but when in your generations, is that going to come back to bite? You get what I mean?
It could come back to me right after this conversation, depending on how my kids feel about it.
Right.
Okay. Exactly.
Yeah. I realize that what I'm saying is a dangerous thing to say.
Right.
It is on all sides, but obviously or not, the last thing I want to be is a white savior. I mean, I'm not any kind of savior, but I don't think what I'm saying is necessarily music to anyone's ears, to be honest with you. But I still think it's true. And what I keep reading in all these different authors that I'm reading, and I can't get through books on race fast enough right now. I mean, I just can't. I feel like once again, it's one of those things where you start chipping away at trying to learn a little bit, and that it just sort of opens up all of these new things that, oh my gosh, there's so much more to learn about this. So I'm never going to catch up is the point, but I do sort of feel a growing conviction that there's a finite amount of resources out there in the world. There's a finite amount of food, there's a finite amount of money, and it's not evenly distributed.
No.
And it's not evenly distributed according to race. And that is a problem for me, because 5 of my kids are kids of people of color. And so when I think about sending them out in the world, this gets very personal very quickly for me. And they're gonna inherit some privilege from me. That's what it is. But I've also seen my son followed in a convenience store by a white employee. I've lived some of this secondhand through them, and so there's some realness to this that the stakes are high for me, and so that's why I'm willing to put myself out there and say some of the things that I am. But I just want to say one thing about reverse racism, since you brought it up, Letty. Reverse racism is a racist term because it puts white people at the center of it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Have we thought about that? I mean, it's a racist term. It's like saying the Middle East, which we take for granted because we live in the West, right? But when we say the Middle East, that's an American-centric term. Yeah. If I say it's reverse racism, that's putting myself at the center, and that in and of itself contributes to racist ideas and systems and thinking. So it's just so like, again, I think I said this last week, but I feel like on the Matrix when they say you can take the blue pill or the red pill, but if you take the blue pill, you're never going to be able to go back to the way you saw things before. Mm-hmm. It's just not possible. Once your mind has been open to the realities of some of these things, you can't unsee them.
I'm gonna pick on.
I don't even know if I answered Gigi's question effectively or not. If I just rambled like an academic, but there you go.
No, I thought it was a good answer. I want to ask Chrissy to chime in because I feel like I wonder if now as an adult with children who are in that district, and I mean, because you said, one, it took a while to figure out that this was happening, and then two, that recently it's been a topic of conversation. I know in like your parent groups or at your school or whatever. Is this something you've heard or arguments that maybe they don't say these exact words? Yeah, you're nodding yes. Okay, go for it.
Yes. I'm also a co-facilitator for JEDI, which is the Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion group for my district. And we are a group of parents who are really trying to come together to try to support the district because of everything that's come out on social media. Our district has done a lot of really great things to present an equity plan for our district to make sure that all of the students are getting the information they need, all of the teachers are being trained properly. So last week we did an event with JEDI on promoting a new course that's going to be put out in the high schools. It's the ethnic literature course. They're doing an ethnic literature in the English classes, and they're doing an ethnic studies course in the social sciences classes. And so we had one of the teachers at one of the high schools do the presentation so that she can essentially try to recruit students to sign up for the class for the fall. And so we did a lot of promoting on social media. We promoted in our mom group for our district. And a lot of the comments that we get when we're promoting these types of events that JEDI's putting on is, how dare you flood our children's brains with these racist topics? And it's mind-blowing. And you do have to laugh. And I'm not trying to knock on my kids' district and the district that I grew up in. Like I said, I feel like I've gotten a lot of opportunities. I felt like because of the district that I went to, I had a lot of privilege thrown at me. And I had a lot of opportunities that a lot of students of color probably would not have had. So I'm very grateful for my district, and I'm not trying to knock on them. And they're doing a lot of really great things to support the equity plan and to prepare the teachers and make sure that students are getting the support that they need. But these comments that constantly show up, and we do get them a lot. We get having an ethnic literature course is racist. What about the white literature? I mean, it's baffling. I mean, I have an English degree. I took you know, Shakespeare. I think I took one ethnic literature class, or maybe a handful in my English career, but that's because I sought out for that. Mm-hmm. However, through high school, I mean, all we read were white male authors. And you know, thankfully it's changing and it's evolving, but this idea that how dare you bring this garbage into our district, it's appalling to me. And it's not even a required course. It's a course that a student can select to take in the place of British literature or expository writing as a 12th grader in our district. So it's, you know, I hear it all the time, probably more so because of the environment that I live in. The more that I'm a part of JEDI and the more that we have these meetings and the more that I have to promote events in our mom groups and the parent groups that I'm in, there's a lot of backlash that we're getting. Thankfully, we have a lot of support with our district, and because we are in alignment with their equity plan, we get a lot of support that way. And there are a lot of parents who are really craving for this. So it's not everybody, but there is definitely a group of people who want to preserve this white culture, so to speak, and this small town feel of what Poway was at one point, and maybe, you know, and so it's but I don't know, it's silly to me, but yeah, we hear it a lot, and it's definitely something that we're constantly having to combat, and I'm having to combat in my own bubble. And you know, we talked about what are we doing to kind of be a part of the cause and not just having all the feels and having all the conversations, but I'm really trying to pave that way and being a part of JEDI, being a part of CARE. In my small circle, although it is small, I'm really trying to pave that for my children so that my children have a better life and they don't experience that racism that is so prevalent right now in our district. And so, you know, hopefully by the time they get to high school, it's a non-issue. And that's a couple of years from now, but I'm hoping that all of the work that I'm doing now, it's going to make a small dent in those students for their generation. So
it's always amazing to me that it's like the representatives who were on the House floor with masks on that said censored because they're like complaining that they couldn't have their say, while they're standing at a microphone in the middle of this government being televised to millions of people across the US and the world saying, I'm being censored. It's like that, like those, I don't know, it makes my head hurt. It makes my head hurt.
Yeah.
Any comments on that before we wrap it up?
Yeah, before we wrap up, I wanted to read just really quick. It's sort of discussing what you were talking about reverse racism, and I highlighted this because my problem is I'm not really good at the debate. You know, when I hear racist things and start to open my mouth, and then people that are white supremacists in their thought processes have very solid put together arguments piece to piece to prove me wrong in my statements. And so I always had a difficulty, but the author gave just one statement and she said, I am talking about issues of systematic racism, which is measurably impacting the health, wealth, and safety of millions of people of color. What are you talking about right now? And so just sort of that blanket statement to say, and if they come back with an answer, then you know it's not worth the time. Just give up the conversation and move on. You're not going to change those individuals. So just my thoughts there. I had a lot of thoughts about Dr. Seuss, but I guess
that's another topic. I'm glad you said that though, because it's always good to kind of feel like you have a little, I don't know, it's not armor or ammunition or whatever, but the idea that you could just say this one thing. You could just say, well, this is what I'm talking about. What are you talking about? And
Yeah.
then there's always like the tell me more kind of prompts where you don't have to be, I keep wanting to say aggressive because I feel like I don't know if I would be able to keep my cool. I know I haven't in the past. But to have like something that you know you're going to say every time you are approached in that way, or like you're saying that you know there's a debate coming. Here's how I'm going to step into it, and then I can figure out whether or not I actually want to take the time and make the effort, because this is not going to be a productive conversation for either of us. And I don't want to sit in your hateful space.
Yeah.
Any last comments before we wrap up and talk about next week? Crickets. Thank you so much for joining us today, Gigi and Chrissy. Hopefully you'll come back for one of the other topics. We've got, a long way to go. While we do this, I'm going to put up your information real quick, Chrissy, because I want to know that that I appreciate you coming on. Canby Designs is Chrissy's side hustle. She's on Instagram and she will take your orders on Instagram. Gigi, it's Because of Love on Facebook. You can check her out. My website is Epic Consulting, epicconsultllc.com. And then a lot of the work that I do, you could see on my website, but I'm going to throw up here the Coalition Anti-Racism Education. CARE is doing a lot of great work, and they also have weekly live streaming different topics every week. And on my website, and their website, you can find information about the course that we created as well. If no one has any sort of last words, I want to talk about next week, chapter 3. What if I talk about race wrong? This is just such a great book. I just love it so much. So this will be our conversation next week. Come prepared, gentlemen. Thank you, Chrissy and Gigi, and we will see you all soon.
Thank you.
Nice meeting you, Gigi.
Bye.
Bye.